Welcome back to Japanophiles. Today we are doing things a little bit differently. Before we've discussed specific pieces of media, today we are talking about a whole medium of entertainment, that being Japanese light novels. And today I have an expert in the field with me. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Justus R. Stone. I have a YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Justus R. Stone. And for the past 4 years, I have been doing reviews, news, and countdowns of light novels, taking a look weekly at the best-selling light novels in Japan, as well as doing reviews of all of the light novels that get released here in English.
Yep, and that's a huge reason of why I wanted to do an episode on light novels, because for the longest time I would hear about, there's this anime I really like. It's adapted from a book, but not really a book. What's this thing? A light novel. We had nothing for years in America.
Yeah.
And I would say right now, I mean, you're probably a better expert on this than I am, but we're going through a huge boom in just getting anything that's been adapted into an anime from a light novel. We are getting all of those now. We got Bakano, which I've been waiting years for.
Yeah, it's had a huge increase since about 2014 is when we see that start to ramp up. And it used to be I could read every light novel that was released in English, and that was new. Anything released that was new, plus any ongoing volumes.
Yeah,
I could read everything that was released in a month easily. Now, the average month, we have 20 volumes of light novels coming out between new series and ongoing series, and it's kind of become impossible, really.
Not to mention with like series that go into 20-something novels and stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, at the rate that we get them in North America, we're getting them maybe one every 4 or 5 months. So, a series that is 20 volumes long, I mean, you're only getting 3 of them a year. It takes you almost 7 years to get through the series.
Yeah. And you know what's out there. You can read the Wikipedia page. You're like, I know Spice and Wolf has this many volumes. One day I'm going to get all of them.
True enough. You know what? It's not as bad, though, now, I guess, because with us having so much coming out, even if you only like maybe 4 or 5 series, if you time it right and read in off months, like you basically have enough material to carry you through that you always have stuff. You're not waiting just for that one next volume to come out because that's the only light novel getting published,
Oh, yeah, exactly. I think one of the big tip-offs for me in light novel popularity was finding out that Goblin Slayer got translated into English, because at the time that I found the light novel, there wasn't an anime announced. There was a manga that was getting released digitally, I think. And it was just kind of not a mystery to me, but I was kind of baffled by like, this has nothing connecting it, and it's a light novel, but we're getting it before we get anything else. Before we even like get a physical copy of the manga, we're getting the actual source material now, where years ago you wouldn't hear about that at all.
No, yeah, it's changed a lot. I think initially, of course, Yen On was the big push for all of this.
Oh, yeah.
Like they came out swinging with like Sword Art Online, The Devil is a Part-Timer. Funny enough, they started with Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? They released the first volume or two before the anime premiered, but the anime was already in production. So at that time, that was probably the closest we got to something that didn't have an anime. But I think when you read the articles where people are being interviewed that work for Yenon and stuff like that, and J Novel Club is the other really huge company right now releasing light novels. When you read interviews with them, I think initially the idea was these companies were testing the waters, and so they went after the titles they figured already had a big fan base, which was why they were going after the books that already had an anime. Yeah. And now, because light novels are proving themselves, in fact, I read an article where a Yenon, one of the chief executives of Yenon, was being asked about it, and he said that now they're seeing that light novels are easily outselling the manga versions, and in some cases are becoming a cornerstone financially of their business. I think that you're seeing now companies are trying to find light novels that they know will probably get an anime, and so they're trying to get those books out and licensed before the anime even comes so that they can sort of strike while it's hot, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I was saying earlier with Goblin Slayer, it was one of those things where I saw it in Barnes and Noble. I had just gotten off a shift at a horrible cafe that's inside of a Barnes and Noble, but that's unrelated to the story. uh, so I see it in the store and I'm like, okay, this doesn't have an anime. I haven't heard anything about the anime, but just the fact that this has made it to North America means that it's going to get something at some point. If not, is already the wheels are turning somewhere and it's going to be picked up.
Yeah, actually, Goblin Slayer seems to be a little bit of an anomaly in general because when you see, like, Yenon has released a number of titles like So I'm a Spider, So What? That time I was reincarnated as a slime. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But all these titles, like, they're just getting anime announced, even though Yenon's already published 2 or 3 volumes here. But they've all placed really well in the Kono light novel Gasugoi publication, which is a yearly publication that basically is put out in Japan, and they do a top 10 list of the best light novels. And almost, I mean, if you go back over the years of that publication, almost every single light novel that it mentions, if it survives at least 2 years or gets, say 7 volumes, gets an anime.
Right.
And so it seems like that was where they were kind of snatching up all of these different kind of titles from the top 1, 2, 3 places of Kano light novel Gasugoi. But Goblin Slayer just seemed to be like, I don't know what it was. I think people just kind of got a whiff of what it was about, and they were like, yeah, this is going to do well, and they picked it up.
It's right there in the title. As soon as you hear it, you kind of know already. Like, okay, this is where they're going. I'm liking this.
Yeah, it's going to be dark. It's going to be a bit violent, and yeah.
So we already got a lot into light novels already, but what I was going to start off with was what makes a light novel different. Let's assume for a second that somebody watching a small little channel called Japanophile has not heard of a light novel. Wild and crazy.
I know.
What makes a light novel different from a novel?
Well, it's funny. I've talked about this so much, and we still debate it a bit. But generally speaking, the sad story is, the long and short is that books that are marketed in Japan as light novels are light novels.
Yes.
Yeah, that seems to be about the only firm definition. But generally speaking, what we see is that they are books that are heavily marketed usually to sort of that mid to late teenage range, although that is changing now that you have an audience that's growing older. They're increasingly bringing out light novels that have older protagonists, that the stories get a little bit more dark and complex. So they're still trying to cater to the audience that they had 8 years ago, 9 years ago, that are now in their mid-20s, late 20s. Generally speaking, they are serialized, so they are relatively short in comparison to a lot of other literary type novels, fiction type novels. So they're relatively short. There is usually a fairly fast turnaround. Like in North America, we'll see a sequel to a book come out a year and a half later, 2 years later. In Japan, the average light novel sequel seems to come out every 4 to 5 months. And they seem to be applying a lot of the manga ideals to books, which, if you go back to the history of light novels basically kind of develop out of an appeal to other media. So a lot of light novels contain knowledge and contain sort of slang and stuff like that, and mechanics that fans of other media would understand. So whether it be anime or particularly gaming.
Oh yeah, any isekai.
Yeah, exactly. Tons and tons of stuff like that. So, I mean, when they write a book about a character leveling up, light novels just went right for that. They didn't bother to explain what a leveling up was, because they just assumed the audience would know.
Oh yeah.
Light novels in general, they use that sort of manga idea of you have arcs, even though there's sort of maybe one big, huge storyline. That storyline is then broken up into smaller arcs. It's told usually over a good number of volumes, like we said, as many as 20 plus. Somebody told me about one series that apparently went on so long the author died before he even finished it.
Yeah, that series was called Berserk. For all you Berserk fans out there, it's going to happen.
They also use, of course, manga imagery to help sell the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they'll hire an artist, and you usually find that with the series, unless something really odd happens, that typically a series will have the same artist at the beginning, and it will follow all the way till the end of the series.
Mm.
So they have, they'll do the cover art. They will then usually have a couple of color insert pages at the front of the book, and then there are usually about anywhere between 7 to 10 black and white images that are scattered throughout the book as well.
Yeah, and that was a huge draw when I was first getting into light novels, because it was around the same time that I was first getting into anime and manga, and suddenly it's, oh, what's this? There's anime pictures in my book. Who put this in here? Whoa.
Well, I think it's kind of that whole idea of it's like a shortcut, and I think it also goes back to a whole idea of the whole marketing of light novels, because they realize that if you put out an actual image that says this is the character. So as an audience, I not only know what the character looks like because I've read it, but I know what the character looks like because I've seen the artwork of that character. So now for a company, a publisher that is trying to say, license that for anime, license it for manga, license things like posters, figures, whatever, they already have the characters designed for that story. So the audience already feels that connection to the character because they know what the character looks like. They know what kind of clothes they wear, what their hairstyle is like that. I kind of feel that by creating that connection of not only an ongoing series where you become invested in the characters themselves because you're reading book to book to book, there's also that whole connection of that visual connection that I know what they look like exactly. Like this is the official image of the character.
Yeah, that goes a long way. I didn't really think about it like that, but that definitely goes a long way into establishing a brand almost.
Yes.
If you think about when I was a kid, I don't know, this might age me pretty poorly in either way, but when I was a kid, they had these series of books called Animorphs. Long-running series of books.
Yeah.
Not unlike a light novel in many ways, but minus the anime pictures. But, if I wanted to draw one of the Animorphs, I guess I'd draw an animal, but that's not really too specific. But then, you have Haruhi, and Haruhi was a huge light novel. Without even putting, the title character, or, the name of the character, if you just had a cardboard cutout of Haruhi, somebody would immediately go, that's Haruhi. She's here. This is her. That instant recognition, really would go a long way into just establishing this across multiple mediums, because as we see, light novels get adapted into manga, anime, drama CDs, whatever else. Although I guess that last one really doesn't need the visual part.
Well, but they've still got the cover, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, of course.
So, and again, it's that whole... I think what you see with light novels, particularly in their rise in popularity, not only amongst readers, but amongst the publishers themselves. I think what you see is a publishing company realizing that they've got a way to have a sustainable multi-stream of income. And that kind of goes back to the 90s with the series Slayers was one of the biggest ones. Yeah. So again, light novel series has a huge anime, huge following. In fact, I saw a poll just a year ago that they said that was the number one in Japan light novel that people wanted to see remade into another anime was Slayers. And I mean, you have that one doing huge money, not only in terms of sales of I guess they would have been VHS tapes back then.
Oh yeah, I still have some actually.
I know. So you have sales of the VHS tapes, you have sales of the light novels, you have tons and tons of merchandising, you have manga spin-offs as well as the novels themselves. And I think that kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s is where Japanese publishers kind of realize, hey, if I've got a book and I've got a recognizable set of characters on it because we've hired a manga artist to create that, we also publish manga. So now we can use the same story. We just need to hire a different artist
Yeah.
to adapt it. And now we've got that property twice, that we're making 2 times the income. And fans of this series are rabid enough that they will buy both. Right?
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting because, as you brought up before, now that we're getting more light novels, you mentioned their manga adaptations not selling or they're outselling their manga adaptations. And
yeah,
I wonder
yeah,
if
the light novels are outselling the manga. Yeah,
yeah. I wonder if there's kind of a cultural difference there. For example, Spice and Wolf. I read that quite a bit for a while, and I just had no interest in reading the manga because I already had the story in a book form. Although, I mean, I know on East and West there's going to be ravenous fans that will purchase just anything related to their topic.
Yeah, I think that's what you see more and more is that to them, I mean, yes, you're always going to have fans that aren't going to go for all of it, right? You're always going to have people that will buy the light novels that won't buy the manga. You're going to have people that will buy the manga but won't buy the light novels. But the fact that you've got the same story that you can appeal to not only both of those audiences, but then also to that third audience that will buy both, because not only do they want the complete story, because the light novels, like a series that starts as a light novel series, the light novel is the story. Like,
Yeah.
No adaptation, whether it be manga, anime, is going to be 100% faithful to the light novel. And I mean that's just a given. I think we see
That's
that
in
in
any medium.
books here, right? Yeah, exactly. And that's across the board, regardless of what country you're in, even. So I think you have fans who want to read the light novel so they get 100% of the story. But because a lot of fans are also fans of like anime, which is a very visual medium, and manga, which same thing, very visual medium, they're kind of like, oh, I'd love to see what such and such sequence would look like in a manga, and so they'll pick up the manga just to see. Particularly, I think series that have a lot of action particularly do well there, or have like ecchi type stuff going on too. Well, because again, right? Because you have like action sequences and you have ecchi sequences in these books. They're good to read, but they also have, of course, a visual aspect component to them that you're appealed to as well, right?
Yes.
So I think that's where you do get fans that will read something in the book and they'll be like, oh, I wonder what this would look like animated, or I wonder what this would look like in a manga. And then they go, oh, well, there it is, right? So now I can buy it.
And that's like constantly the fear of any fan of a light novel is, oh, what's this scene gonna look like in the anime? That's been I'm gonna keep mentioning Goblin Slayer mainly because it's one of I made a video on it a while back.
Right.
But that's one thing that in that sort of circle people have been questioning, like, oh, how many of the darker elements are gonna get carried over from Goblin Slayer? How much is gonna be retained in the transfer over to an anime? But that goes for really anything. Full Metal Panic, for example, finally got a 4th season after years and years of not having one.
Right.
And the big question was like, oh, how are they going to do this? When they get to this point, are they actually going to go through with how the novel does it here? Or are they going like, I guess that works with anything that has a adaptation from one medium into another.
Well, I think, you're right. And I mean, even with Goblin Slayer, if we take that as sort of an example, because I mean, we don't know what the anime is going to do, but even if you take a look at the light novel to the manga is way more explicit than the light novel.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Entirely. But that's almost because the manga can do those things without dwelling on, or without really like dwelling on it because you're reading it at your own pace.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's true. Like reading, I agree. Like reading words, I find is way more impactful. Like reading a really uncomfortable, nasty scene, I find reading it in words because I think you're conjuring it in your own mind. It makes it way worse than just seeing like an image in a manga. I don't know, but I think it's because it feels like it's gotten inside you more, I think is what I feel.
No, yeah, that's definitely there. And in the case of Goblin Slayer, a lot of the more graphic scenes in the light novels are kind of just alluded to. They're almost
Yeah,
vaguely brought up in
yeah,
just enough of a way that like you get the gist of it. While
yeah,
in the manga, you have like human meat shields on goblin shields,
yeah.
obviously,
Yeah,
and
you've got like fairly explicit rape scenes and
yeah, there's that
yeah.
too.
Yeah,
That's the big
exactly. It's
question for the anime.
yeah, well, and I think that's it. I think that's why a lot of fans, like people who have read both, I think that's the thing. They say, like, how's the anime going to go? Is it going to follow the manga route because it is a visual medium like manga? Is it
Mhm.
going to include the more graphic stuff? Or is it going to follow the light novel and heavily imply and make it, well, pretty obvious what is
Right.
happening, but not actually show it?
Yeah.
So I tend to think that they're gonna. My theory is they will go more the graphic route of the manga, and it will be released censored, and then there will be an uncensored Blu-ray release.
Oh, really? Fucking
Yeah.
double dipping there.
Well, I mean, that's we've seen that with lots of series, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, with some series now, they're when they depending on when they show is whether they're censored or not. Like High School DD, I think you can watch DxD like uncensored late at night. So some streamers will have it uncensored, but Crunchyroll, for instance, because they're much more of like a family channel, and because they usually pick it up from its earliest streaming time, it's usually censored.
Yeah.
So,
You get to
but I
miss
think
out.
that's how. Yeah, I think that's how Goblin Slayer is going to go. I think if you watch it on Crunchyroll, you'll see lots of black bars and hazy white fading and stuff like that.
They do the JoJo thing where just part of
Yeah,
it's completely in shadow.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna yeah, you'll have to buy the Blu-ray to get it uncensored, or find it elsewhere online.
All right. So your channel is completely centered around light novels now.
Yes.
I mean, obviously you're an avid light novel enthusiast. But is this also like you're filling a void in YouTube because there's nobody else that's doing the sort of light novel reviews, the consistent like week by week light novel reviews that you're doing on your channel.
Yeah, well, I mean that is true. There really
Mhm.
doesn't seem to be any channels right now that are doing exactly what I do. Yeah, I do about I try to do at least 2 to 3 reviews a week, and then like I said, I do the weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling in Japan, and then every month I do a video sort of previewing what light novels will be released in English the following month. And then we've also done a light novel podcast that we've started up to do more like in-depth spoiler discussions on books, because on my channel I try to make it very spoiler free.
Mm.
Um,
Because it's more, especially since you're focusing on the English releases of things, it's definitely more focused on should you buy this or
yes,
should you read this, should you buy it, rather than more of a let's analyze this and think about like, oh, how is the prose and stuff like that,
yeah. I
piece by
to me,
piece. Or
yeah. I mean, to me, I think the thing is that I obviously I love light novels, enjoy them a deal, but I still view them as entertainment. Like it's
Mhm.
not, yes, there have been light novels that impacted me definitely, but I don't read them because I think that it's going to change my life or any. So I kind of approach with my channel. It's sort of the same thing. It's like your time is valuable. Books aren't cheap. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
So
especially when there's 20 in a series and
yeah, no
you're
kidding.
buying them each at like maybe like 13 if we're lucky.
Well, well, I'm in Canada. They're actually more like 18 where I am.
Oh, I'm
So
so sorry.
yeah, we don't get the deep Amazon discounts that you guys do. Yeah, so I very much approach my channel with sort of the idea of trying to help people find a series that they'll love.
Mm.
That's kind of my mission statement. That's kind of my theory on why the channel exists. And also just to try and increase the fandom of it, because despite the fact that we have so many more light novels now than we did just even 4 years ago, it's still a pretty small fandom when you compare it to something like, say, anime or manga, right?
Yeah.
but to be honest, I didn't start the channel because I was like, oh, I'm going to fill a niche that doesn't exist on YouTube. The funny thing is,
You
so
definitely
I
cornered that market.
well, it just, and again, it's one of those things that just happened, right? Like
Mhm.
I started the channel several years before I started with light novels, and I started it because I also write books. I've just finished a 4-book series called The Bleeding Worlds, and when I started the YouTube channel, I did it because everybody said, "Oh, if you're an author or aspiring author, you got to get on YouTube because that's the big thing, and that's going to be the future, and you want everybody to know who you are, and video's it." And so I got on there and I started doing book reviews, just whatever book I was reading at the time. But I put out a video a month here, a month there. Never really got into it, and then I kind of decided that I wanted to get a little bit more serious about YouTube, but I had no idea what direction to take
Mhm.
because there was so much out there. Like I was like, okay, I love video games. Oh, there's like 8 million video game
Yeah,
channels out there.
there's a ton.
Oh, I really like anime. Oh, there's like 8 million anime channels out there. And then Sword Art Online comes out as a light novel in English, and so I picked it up and I read it, and I was like, you know what? I haven't read a book on my YouTube channel in a long time. I'm going to talk about this. So I did. And I don't think that it was really that video did so well that I was like, oh my
Mhm.
God, this is it. It was more like I just started picking up more light novels, and I was like, man, I really like these. Why don't I just review these every month, like whenever a new
Yeah,
one comes out, right? I mean,
it's a
there was
very
like,
natural progression for a YouTube channel.
well, exactly. I was like, there's one new one coming out maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It's not a lot of commitment. I can read a book and review it every 2 or 3 weeks, whatever, no big deal.
Yeah.
And it was probably in 2015 that I said, okay, this is it. There's enough light novels now being released that I can say the channel is 100% dedicated to light novels. And that's just what I did. And I've not really looked back since then. And like I said, it just was one of those natural progressions that I was like, you know what, I really like these. I'm going to talk about them.
Yeah.
And again, I like, who knew when I said that 3 years later I'm doing video release videos and it takes me 40 minutes long to do them because there's 30 titles coming out.
You just spiraled out of control.
I kind of did a little bit. Like I've gotten to the point now, like I said, when I first started, I read every volume of every light novel that was being released because there weren't that many. Now I pretty much can only say to myself, like, all I'm going to do is read the first one, and then if I love it, I'll read more.
Mhm.
If I don't, at least I've reviewed the first volume so people can get an idea of what it's about.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting because what I've seen with a lot of light novel series that I start is that I'll get the first volume I'll really enjoy, then the next volume I'll maybe even enjoy a little bit more, but then you start to notice kind of a pattern with a lot of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just really a series slumping into kind of a middle ground, like we're in this routine now, we're
Yeah.
doing things.
Yeah.
And that is something that kind of comes with the territory of having these massive series.
Regardless of whether you're a filmmaker, a comic book artist, regardless of what medium you work in, I think if you find a formula that works, you kind of stick to it.
Yeah.
And some series, I think, lend themselves to being more flexible so that you can go anywhere. The book can become anything and do anything. But
Like Bakano or Do Da 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 can just change its cast every single volume for.
right, or even a series like, say, a really popular one right now is Overlord.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and I mean, even that, like, you've got a whole world to explore, and you've got a main character, or a set of characters that, as you follow them, I mean, you're basically following them exploring this world, but also exploring ways to subvert and conquer this world, right? So, I mean, it really lends itself to go just about anywhere and do anything. Like, yes, it's stuck in sort of that fantasy setting, but in terms of what characters it introduces, in terms of what the geography looks like, in terms of what creatures they encounter, it's really limitless in terms of what you want to do.
Mm.
And even with the main character being sort of a character who is sliding quickly away from still having some humanity towards becoming an unfeeling lich, even that character development element is there, right? So yeah, so definitely you're right, though. There are some series that, man, you get into that second or third volume, especially the third volume, and you're kind of like, this series is a little bit of a one-hit wonder. Like, it's just kind of a one-note tune.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I usually, I must admit, like I really do try to read at least two volumes, because sometimes I'll read the first volume and I'll be like, you know what, it's bad, but does the story go somewhere
Yeah,
cool?
there's that
Or
hook of, I mean, with
yeah.
almost any light novel, the hook is like, I'm not really that interested, but are these two going to get together at the end of this? Am I?
well, well, I mean, there's definitely that. I mean, I read for the. I like to see what kind of conflicts there are, what kind of
Yeah.
character development you see. One series that I absolutely love. I just actually finished the latest volume. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon?
Hmm.
And I mean, one of the reasons that I love it is because of the main character's story and how he develops as a character. And when you read the first volume, you're kind of like, okay, well, this is cool, but I kind of wonder where this character's going to go. You read the second or third volume, you're like, okay, I'm kind of into this now because this is a character who gets beaten and bloodied and tries to keep pushing ahead and become stronger and become better. And it
Mm.
throws challenges at the main character, and those challenges vary. Like it's not just who's the big strong monster of the week. It can also be things like, public perception of the main character, which is sort of what was addressed in sort of this newer arc of the series. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I think really for me, as I said, I'm just at the point just realistically say to myself, well, when between Yen On and J Novel Club releasing 9 brand new number one volumes just this month,
Yeah.
I'm just not going to read anything else. Like it's just not going to happen. And it's that's the one thing about the having a YouTube channel, particularly a YouTube channel where I have read later volumes of some series, is that you get a lot of people writing you like saying, "Hey, you know what? Don Machi Volume 11's been out for 3 months. Where's the review?"
Oh, yeah.
And so not only am I a fan, I really want to get caught up, but I still, and but then you've got people dogging you too, sort of saying like, dude, what's the deal?
Yeah.
And it's hard to balance out that kind of thing where you're sort of like, well, what do I read now? Do I read what I really want to read, or do I read what I think I should read for the sake
Yeah,
of
or
the
what people
channel,
want me
right?
to read. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like I think that's kind of the thing. When I first started it, it was like I said, I mean, I just did it for fun because hey, these are kind of cool. But now 4 years later with a growing fan base and everything else, it's more of a business where you're looking at books and going, well, I want to read that one, but I can't read that one because a publisher just sent me this book which I need to review because I promised them that I would read it.
Yeah, and
Or
you have to have it out by a certain time. You don't want to
yeah,
miss the boat on it and stuff.
well, and to be honest, it's not a it's not the kind of channel where I'm getting showered with like money and stuff for sponsored videos and
Right,
stuff.
right.
So if a publisher's kind enough to say, "Hey, we've got a book coming out that we think is cool. Would you like to read it?" Yes, yes, I would certainly love to read that book because I was going to buy it anyway. So you just saved me $15. God bless you. Like
Yeah.
so. But yeah, so it's gotten a little bit. Sometimes I'm almost like, wow, this feels a little bit out of hand. Sometimes like it's a little out of control. Like
Gotta rein it back in. Gotta
well,
get control of your life again.
well, but I just keep adding layers, right? It's a YouTube channel. Now I'm going to do a podcast.
Oh, it only gets, and then that's when you go in depth on a book, and then people are like, "Oh yeah, when are you gonna go in depth on Volume 4?" Yeah,
Right.
that's what I really want to hear about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've even had people say to me, they're like, "What is spoiler reviews, like spoiler-free reviews?" But for later volumes, why don't you shoot 2 videos? Do one that's spoiler-free, and then do one that's a spoiler video. And I'm like, you realize that I work 12-hour shift work, and I've got a family and everything else. Like, you're lucky I'm in front of the camera for 30 minutes right now, honestly.
Yeah. So you did bring up something interesting before about focusing in on the character character interactions, and that being the main draw of light novels.
Mhm.
Because as a medium, light novels have a certain type of volume that I've never seen anywhere else. So let me pitch you something real quick, okay?
Okay.
It's the Harry Potter series, right? We got books 1, 2, and 3, and we're going good. But then book 4 is just a series of like loosely connected short stories about the characters, and it's not bad, but you're definitely like, well, this isn't progressing anything, but I'm enjoying this. And I've
Yeah.
experienced that with so many light novel series. Haruhi has a couple volumes like that where it's just like, yeah, these were published in a couple other magazines. We've just collected them here. There's not
Yeah.
really like a big story in this one. You're just getting a little slice of every character here.
Yeah. I don't think I've read a series yet that hasn't had a volume that was like almost all of the series have at least one volume, if not more. That is exactly like that. And you're right. Like, well, I think is a combination of factors. One of the things that we're seeing increasingly now is light novels are being picked up that are web novels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for English speaking audiences, Wattpad is probably the easiest thing to associate.
Not even.
No, it's
nothing
way
on
bigger.
Wattpad is going to get published.
Not true. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But just in terms of what the website functions like. So basically, you have a bunch of people that want to be authors, and they start writing their stories chapter by chapter, whatever, on this web server. And I think the thing is that for a lot of these authors, aspiring authors,
Yeah.
as they start to gain a following online, and I mean, you know this and I know this as YouTubers, right?
Mhm.
You start getting a bit of a following, you realize that one of the things that's going to help your following is consistent content and putting out content on a regular basis. And so I think what happens is that some of these authors, they will start their story and then they hit a bit of a wall. And so to get more stuff out web novel wise, they'll write a short story.
Yeah.
Or I have to imagine, given what some of these short stories are like, I have to imagine that they get people that write comments like, "Oh, that's great, but why wasn't this character around during this?"
Yeah,
Well,
or like,
okay.
what was, I want to see these two characters, like, go and do something.
Yeah, so then the author's like, okay, fine, I'll answer that. This is why this character wasn't around in chapter 5. This is what they were doing. Boom, you've got a short story. They put that out. And then I think basically what happens is that when these books are then picked up by publishers, their whole idea is we want to pump out a consistent release schedule. We want to put these books out consistently. We want them out there on the shelves every 4 to 5 months, because if we don't, people will forget about us. Because as much as you can say 20 to 30 light novels sounds like a lot, that is like a drop in the bucket compared to some months in Japan, right? So, I mean, you can have weeks where you have 20 volumes released that are light novels. So I think that for a publisher, they're kind of like, well, every bit of material we can publish, we're going to. And so they just publish it basically in order that the author wrote it. And they ask the author, of course, they'll edit it. Sometimes I've seen what they've done with some short story volumes. One short story will be unique to that volume, but the others will have been either from the web novel or, like you said, published in a magazine or
it's to
what
draw
have you,
them
right?
in and...
Yeah, exactly. So they'll write new content that will draw people in and make them buy the book. And sometimes when they do that, I see that those original stories that are original to that light novel might tie into what's going on, because they're kind of doing it like after the fact. You know what I mean? Like,
they'll foreshadow either like a new character or some
right,
new aspect of something.
Right, because at the point that they're writing that short story, if you go by the web novels, they're already like 10 volumes further ahead than what's getting released in that book, right? So they can foreshadow stuff. And but you're right. It is kind of funny that there's not a lot of other, there's certainly not in terms of books, in terms of prose, there's not a lot of other series that do that.
Yeah.
Put out like a short story volume and stuff like that.
It just sounds weird when you think of it in a kind of Western context of like, oh, this is just a book about the characters just, doing stuff. Sometimes sometimes it's just a chapter of like a side character's daily routine.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
like
yeah.
sometimes that's some of the best stuff in the light novel series because it's like, oh, this is kind of nice.
Yeah, well, I think it serves, like you said, it serves that multi-purpose of
Mm.
it allows you to focus on characters that may not be noticed as much because they're background characters. It allows the author just to kind of do a story that's completely unlike anything else in the main series, but
Mm.
they can get away with it because it's a quote unquote side story, you know?
Yeah, it's not an official one.
Right, like they can do whatever they want, and the funny thing is that you see this even, and as I said, like light novels in a lot of ways borrow from manga, anime, video games. So it's not, I guess, all that shocking that having anime that has these sort of shorter vignettes, and I mean, let's face it, lots of anime will do things where they'll have an episode that focuses on a character that's a side character.
Oh yeah.
So I think light novels kind of follow that same idea that they're like, well, I watched an anime that was 95 episodes long, and 15 episodes of those were just throwaway little stories, but hey, they did something really cool with a side character you hardly ever see. And I think you see light novels kind of saying, like, that's what I'm going to do, especially for series that have, like, big casts.
Oh, yeah. I think it's kind of funny how you see light novels attempt to imitate anime in a lot of way, because that's obviously what they're going for with the aesthetic and everything. Just little things where you're like, okay, yeah, this is kind of like in a single episode of an anime, just within a chapter. And
Right.
if you look at Western novels or even, Japanese literature that isn't light novels, any prose in general, really, you don't get that. If your chapter can just be sectioned off from the rest of the book, then it shouldn't be in there.
Right. Well,
Obviously not. Well, not a rule. Obviously, it's not.
no, but you're right though. A lot of that stuff, I write and writing advice. That's exactly it. They're like, if it doesn't move the plot forward, it doesn't need to be there. And yet, you see tons of stuff in light novels that it doesn't really move the main plot, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
Or it's funny,
yeah.
it just develops things a little bit more.
Like, you go back to Goblin Slayer. Volume 4 was a short story episode, and there was one story in there where Goblin Slayer, Spearman, and Knight, or whatever they call him, like Fine Knight or whatever, like
it's the one, like I have the first 3 volumes. That's the one that I haven't read yet.
oh god, dude, there's like the story follows the 3 of them going on a quest together because all of their sort of like follower stuff. I can't remember how it comes down to it being just the 3 of them, but oh my god, it's hysterical. Like it's awesome. I would have bought the book just for that story.
With Goblin Slayer especially, he's such a character. Just like he's the perfect kind of character that you go, I want to see him just thrown into this situation. How does Goblin Slayer deal with this?
Well, and that's the whole thing. Like it's a really funny volume because it's them going on this quest, and of course it's not goblins, so Goblin Slayer's all put out, right? but it's kind of like showing how these other accomplished adventurers that do a lot more than just slay goblins, how they see that even if he's so focused on slaying goblins, his knowledge still can be applied to a lot of other stuff. So it's kind of a cool story because, I mean, first of all, like I said, it's actually really funny. And secondly, because you see how these different characters seem to kind of learn from each other, even though their styles and even what quests they normally would go on are so different from one another. It's I think that's the thing that I really like about light novels is that because there seems to be that inherent flexibility in that they can do things that are a little bit different and go outside the box or expand the box. I think I was going to say, like, I think the reason you don't see things like short story volumes in, say, North American series is because most North American series are dedicated to telling one story.
Yeah.
Like Harry Potter was the story about Harry facing Voldemort and defeating him. That was the story.
And if ever there was a series that could contain a short story volume, like
seriously, yeah. I mean, it's got a huge cast. It's got a huge world that's very filled with all sorts of different locations and everything else. Yeah, easily it could have had short story volumes. But again, you still, like, the North American mentality seems to be that a series is telling one big story. And even though you do have light novels that do that, they still approach it in a way that there's all these small stories that will eventually add up to the big
It's
story.
very much like a episodic anime. It's definitely
Exactly.
borrowing from that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, like you take Danmachi. Is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? Like the
You're
main,
gonna speed through that every time.
I know.
And
Well,
in
I'll
the
just
audio,
call
I'll
it
just make it go
Danmachi.
faster every single time you have to say it.
I'll just call it Danmachi now that I've equated the two things together. In Danmachi, the main story seems to be more about the character becoming greater than what he is.
Mm.
So with that loose, big story, you can have all of these other stories that are all just told about like what the character gets involved in that help him grow and help him develop and challenge him and things that push him down and how he rises above them. And so you've got all of these stories that the series tells that, like, I don't feel it has to tell me some big overarching narrative like, the bad guy's coming and we all need to prepare to
Yeah.
fight him, whereas that's what you see in almost all North American series books, is that it's telling one big story. So
Especially in
everything that
young
happens is
adult
riveting.
sort
Oh
of
yeah.
fiction. And that's typically, I don't know who this is unfair to, but that's typically where I put light novels. If I'm suggesting it to somebody that is completely outside of like the light novel world, or even, maybe they like anime and manga, I
Yeah.
usually pitch it to them like, it's like a more anime centric young adult book.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
Mm,
you're like I said, you're not wrong. I mean, if you take a look at it, that's really it. I mean, light novels started off pitched to a young adult audience, and they're using anime imagery, and they're using that exact same format, right?
yeah.
Episodes, right? Each, whether it be chapters or each volume of the book, whatever you want to call it, there's still chapters, there's still episodes, right?
Mm.
And each episode is building on top of the episode before it. And yeah, we can have those odd books that are like a break away from the intensity of the story, and it's just a side volume about girls buying underwear or, guys eating cake or whatever the heck happens in them. But, and again, I think because a lot of light novels are focusing on that whole character aspect. We want you to be invested in the character. That's why we're showing you what the character looks
Yeah.
like. So, because of that, that's, I think, why this short story volumes, people end up liking them, because they are invested in the characters. They want to know, what do the characters do when they're not involved in some crazy hijink type story, like, what do they do when they're just going shopping? Like,
Very personal.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna move it into the end here, mainly so I
Okay.
don't have to edit a whole hour. But
Yep.
so very quickly, want to hear your thoughts. Recommend a light novel to somebody that has never read light novels. What is your easiest sell to your hardest buyer?
A specific title, or just how I would sell light novels?
Specific title, or maybe light novels as a genre. Either way, somebody that is totally against it.
Wow, you're not making that easy. The first thing that I say to people, because I do get asked this, people saying to me, like, what should I read? My first question is always, well, what do you like? Because like anime, like manga, there are tons of sort of subgenres within the light novel medium. So what do you like? Well, I like fantasy. Okay. Well, this is where I would recommend something like, depending on the person and what they kind of liked, I could be like, well, is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? I know the title sounds stupid, and it's very, very unfortunate, but it really is 10 times better than what it seems. It is a story about a young boy. It is a hero's tale. It is about how a boy goes from becoming a simple farmer to becoming a hero, someone that can be a beacon for society to look to, and as a paragon of what a person should be. And it's about his trials and tribulations as he grows and develops as a character. And if you're looking for a book that is fun, that has lots of action and humor, but at the same time isn't, these mammoth 600-page long novels, like it's something you can just read in a relaxed setting, bit by bit, that's where light novels are really a great sell and a great read, because they are meant to be meant as a light entertainment.
You can breeze through it in an afternoon.
Well, yeah, you can. I mean, I probably read, admittedly, I don't think I read usually a light novel of 200 pages will take me about 3.5 to 4 hours.
Right.
Like I read about 50 pages or so, give or take.
Mm.
That seems to be kind of my, depending on the book, obviously, but
Yeah.
but yeah, but generally speaking. So, yeah, I mean, when I'm talking to people about light novels, I mean, it is a hard sell if they're really against things like anime.
Well, there's going to be there's going to be people you're not going to sell a light novel to ever,
Yeah,
right?
true.
There's going to be somebody that you say, man, this story is really engaging, but you got to get past like the anime eyes. You as a person have to get past this to enjoy.
Yeah, the main character is gonna every 50 pages grab those boob by accident. I'm sorry, but it's gonna happen. But other than that, it's fantastic.
I guess just for me, I think what I've had the most success with, I don't know, because I haven't had a fucking tough customer. This hypothetical person that hates light novels that we have to sell to. A specific title, at least, is Bakano, because it just doesn't have so many of those trappings of typical anime cliches. It's a lot easier to sell as like, oh, it's a series about immortals in the 1930s, and each volume changes every single time. But
different characters, different time time periods. Yeah, you're right. I think again, right? Like one of the things that I like about light novels is that they have that sort of. I mean, obviously some are pure fantasy and stuff, but there's a lot that have that kind of urban fantasy type feel to them. Like Durarara obviously is a great example, right? I mean, it is a book about gangs, but then you've got this headless,
the
motorcyclist, and yeah, exactly, and you've got all these other kind of you've got this possessed sword and like you've got all these other kind of weird and strange and wacky elements, but it works for some reason, and it's even though the main story is just about people that could be in our world, even series like say Boogie Pop Phantom, or it's just Boogie Pop.
Oh
like Boogie, and I mean that was one of the series really blew light novels out of the park. It's considered sort of the prototype of what the modern light novel is.
Is that from what I heard, the light novels haven't been completely brought over into the West?
No, they have not even close.
We think now that we're getting more stuff, I think we're supposed to get a new Boogie Pop anime too.
Yeah, there's a new Boogie Pop anime coming, and I think to kind of coincide with Seven Seas initially licensed the first 3 volumes of Boogie Pop, which is the first sort of arc, if you will. I think I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I know there's probably at least 20 volumes of Boogie Pop.
Yeah.
But now what they're doing is they have this anime coming out. So now Seven Seas is not only re-releasing Boogie Pop in print format, they just released the ones they did previously in ebook. They're releasing them in print, but they've also licensed 3 more books. So there'll be 6 Boogie Pop volumes available that 3 of them have never been published in English before.
And then hopefully if they do well enough.
Right. So if it does well enough, maybe they'll publish more of it. Maybe they'll license more of it. I think what they're kind of doing an arc at a time so that you still feel like there's kind of a complete reading experience to it, but it saves them kind of having to get on the hook for 20 volumes if it doesn't do well.
That was how they initially did the Legend of Galactic Heroes volumes.
Yep.
It was like, exactly. Okay, if you like this enough, start buying it because we're only doing the first 3, and then maybe we get enough.
Yep. Well, I think it's because because what's happening now. I mean, we've had sort of 3 waves of light novels. We had 2005, 2006 with Tokyo Pop.
Oh yeah.
Tokyo Pop went bust, and then in 2008 Yeah, and left a ton of light novels unpublished. Like, I think some of the series they only had to put out maybe 2 or 3 more volumes, and it would have finished the series. But they didn't. Like, they just ended.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I know Full
they,
Metal Panic was one of the
yeah,
series cut off by.
yep. Full Metal Panic, Slayers.
Yep.
They licensed Kino's Journey, but they only put out 1 volume of it. But
Oh God,
because they
that's right.
right, and because they licensed it, the license is tied up, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so because of that, I think what happened was is that you had 2 things happen. The Japanese publishers were like, "We're not going to license a light novel series unless you are going to promise us you finish it because you've now tarnished our product."
Mm.
And for the English publisher side of it, they were kind of like, they didn't do that great, so
We
we
don't
don't
want to
want to
commit to
be
20 books that might not go
that
over well.
exactly that might not sell. So I think, and it wasn't until the market now has matured, and I think because you have now a much more mature manga market, a much more mature anime market,
Mm.
and because now, I mean, you go back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if an anime was based on a light novel series, it still ended. Even if it didn't end the way that the light novel ended, you still felt like I could watch this anime and I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
It's good. It tells the story. But now they're not doing that. Now they're like, oh, we're going to publish and we're going to put out an anime season that covers the free book but ends. Go buy the light novel. And with that philosophy now permeating in anime, I think that's part of the reason why you're seeing light novels doing well is because now, as English consumers, we have access to a crap ton of anime for a really low price. And we're watching these series and loving them, and then we're like, what the hell happens next? And then suddenly
Do
a
these two
company
characters
like,
get together? I got invested at the beginning of the anime and
right.
nothing happened.
And then all of a sudden, Yen on, J Novel Club, whatever they come, we've got the books, and the books will tell you, And so people are like, yeah, okay, I'll buy the book, like
Yeah.
no brainer. So I think I think that's why we've seen light novels now take off a lot better because there's that access, right? And because, I mean, let's face it, if 10 years ago, if it was going to cost me $80 to get a DVD series of a series that I knew wasn't finished and probably would never be finished, I'm not going to spend $80, even if somebody tells me it's awesome.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Right?
No.
Whereas now, for $9 a month, if I want to watch that series just to see if and it gets me really into it, now I'm going to go read the book.
Yeah.
Because, so I think that's part of the reason that we see A, light novels doing better, and B, why initially all anime focused. Like Devil is a Part-Timer. I mean, that anime only did the first 2 books. Now we're almost 11 volumes into that series, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you liked the anime, I mean, you've got 9 more books worth of material. Yeah, exactly. Don Machi only covered the first 5 books. We now have 11 volumes available in English, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it goes on and on, right? So I really do. I think that's part of the reason you're seeing a lot of that sort of surge now. People are like, yeah, give us the books. We'll read the books. And now that because English publishers are doing well, they're licensing these series from the Japanese publishers, and the Japanese publishers are allowing it to happen because they're like, we know these companies will finish publishing the books. Right. Plus, I mean,
they
have
that established fan base.
Right. And because a company like, say, Yen On, I mean, they're that's the light novel imprint, but Yen Press, as a manga company, has been out for over 10 years. So it's not like there's some fly-by-night company that may tank a year from now, 2 years from now, right? Tokyo Pop lasted for a while, but still, it hadn't really been tested. Like 2008, when the economy went to crap, I mean, you saw the companies that were smart. 7C survived. Yen On survived. So, these companies survived. So I think now the Japanese publishers are like, well, those companies have been out for such a long time and have survived both the ups and downs of the industry. They are a safe bet to entrust our work to.
Yeah.
Because I don't get the sense with the Japanese that it's just about money.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
It hardly ever is. I mean,
yeah.
Well, that's a generalization, but no, there's definitely more of that integrity with a lot more of Japanese works, even if it's something as strange and weird as I got reincarnated as a slime,
Yes.
there's still like an integrity that the publisher will have about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, it's that idea of wanting to protect their work. And two is that now that anime and manga are such a huge international phenomenon, they don't want that title in any way to fail.
Yeah.
Because then that could impact them licensing the anime. It could impact them licensing the manga, right? If a company picks up our light novels and goes bust, then
Then
how
it's
are we
all
going to
over the country.
sell the anime internationally? Because people will be like, well, this came out as a book and nobody liked it, so we don't want to pay you for the
Yeah,
anime, right? So, I mean, there is an integrity factor, but there is a business factor to it as well, I'm
of
sure,
course.
right? Like, I mean, no company does things just for the sake of honor and integrity.
That's what got Tokyo Pop crashed,
I,
obviously.
I think a little bit.
All right. Well,
And what's really weird is they're coming back.
they are what?
Yeah,
What?
Tokyo Pop's coming back. I guess apparently they went to belly in like North America, but somehow managed to survive. I think in Europe a little bit. Like I think they scaled way, way, way back. I think they only had maybe one or two titles, but yeah, they were just at like San Diego Comic Con, Anime
Jeez.
Expo.
That's
Yeah,
like
like
going to Chernobyl and finding out that there was just one guy that made it through. It's like, yeah,
and now he's
I'm
opening
fine.
a new town right there.
Yeah, exactly. We're any day now. It's coming
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Forget about the fallout. It's all good. It's fine. You know, you won't glow after eating the chicken. It's all good. Yeah. So yeah, it's weird. It is strange,
Mm.
but anyway.
Yeah, that seems like a good enough note to end it on. A Chernobyl joke, at least. Please, we've talked about your channel on the on this show. Please plug it again once more for us. Tell us about your books.
All
What you
right.
got going on?
All right. So the channel, of course, youtube.com/ I guess it's user/Stone. That's Justus. If you just search Justus R. Stone, you'll find me because,
Yeah,
yeah, it's
a
easy.
few others out there.
No, there's no others as far as I can tell. Even if you just type in light novel reviews, you'll almost inevitably find my channel.
Funny story. I did find your channel when I was making my Goblin Slayer video, and I double checked because I do this a lot if I'm making a video. I double check to see like, okay, what are other people on YouTube saying about it, and how are their videos doing? And
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, this guy does he has a whole channel dedicated to light novels. I can get into this.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's really how a lot of people find me is searching
Mm.
for reviews on a particular series, which is why I read basically all of them, but
Yeah.
at least a couple of volumes. So yeah, so the Justice R. Stone. If you look me up, you're inevitably going to find me. Basically, if you Google Justice R. Stone, you're going to find me just about everywhere. I'm on most social media: Facebook, Twitter, kind of Instagram. I'm really horrible at that. There's
Yeah.
not much there. If you look up lightnovelpodcast.com, that's where the light novel podcast is. But I
I
do
wonder
also.
what they do there.
I know it's crazy, right? Well, since light novels title themselves to tell you basically what the story's about, like why shouldn't the podcast? Um,
Well, you should have really titled the podcast "Is It Wrong to Podcast About Light Novels?" and then abbreviate it to something like horrible.
Well, we've joked about different things about what we might call the podcast, or even like each episode. Sometimes we've joked about what we would call an episode, but how my wallet was dissolved by a light novel series, or stuff like that. So yeah, so there's that. Like I said, I wrote a 4-novel series called The Bleeding Worlds. It's available pretty much anywhere online that you can buy books. It is a urban fantasy retelling of Ragnarok, the Norse sort of mythology telling the end of the world. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but that's probably the easiest way to say it in a matter of a couple of seconds.
Elevator pitch.
Yeah, it's very heavily influenced by anime because I'm a big fan of anime as well as light novels. I say anime because when I started writing it, light novels weren't even a thing. But I am working on something now that is probably going to be way more light novel centric than the Bleeding Worlds was. And that's pretty much it for me. Like I do YouTube, I do podcast, those books, and I am just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
If
So
anyone wants
this
to hit you up.
well, this year I go to there's a big anime convention in Toronto called Anime Earth that happens in May. I've been there the last 2 years. I will be there next year most definitely. I've done a couple panels on writing and stuff like that at that convention. So if you're at Anime North or looking to go to an anime convention in Toronto sometime in May 2019, I will be there wandering around doing panels, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to do more conventions, at least locally. I don't have the funding to do anything really international right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not.
Ironically, I think I was only a panelist before I really started to do YouTube. It's just how things work, I guess.
Yeah,
Now
well, I mean, it's what though, it's the same thing with me. I mean, I did panels on writing, and I had a light novel panel at Anime North. Anime North, I had like 5 people show up light novel panel, but then the writing panels were packed.
Oh
Like
yeah,
so,
because
well, it's a lot more of a. It's not as niche, obviously, but
it's very general, but also like you're in a place full of introverted nerds. Each person in that room has their own like this is my magnum opus novel, and if
yeah.
I go to a writing panel, maybe there's like a secret that I'm missing. Maybe there's like a secret thing that I just don't get, and he's gonna tell me it.
Well, I think there's that. I think there's also just that affirmation thing. Like, wow, that Yahoo up there can write a 4-book series. I can do it.
There's that too, I guess.
But yeah, so yes, that's what I do. That's where I'm at online, and yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that's all the things that I have.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, and I'm going to be around my YouTube channel. You can find me here. If you're finding me here, you already know where to subscribe. Hit that bell and all that stuff. Thanks again.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.